So welcome to all of you Shiksha 360, and in this session basically we have to discuss MCQs of chapter number 2 of BFM. Clear? So let's start our discussion, and this is basically set number 8. Clear? Till now basically set number 9. Clear? Till now basically we have discussed 8 sets of the BFM MCQ discussion, that is somewise, that is chapter wise. Clear? And sometime basically that are 2 to 3 chapters collaboration. Clear? And today basically we will discuss chapter number 2. Clear? That is related to the chapter number 2. Clear? So let's start. And our first question is basically question number 94. Clear? We will discuss 12 questions in this session. Clear? Basically we will try to discuss 12 questions basically in this session. And the first question is basically question number 94, that is, which of the following basically describes exchange risk? Clear? First question basically it is related to the exchange risk. Clear? Basically which of the following? Clear? Basically which of the following basically describes the exchange risk? Clear? So let's go with the option one by one. Clear? Which of the following basically describes the exchange risk? So please go through the options and tell fast basically which one is the correct answer. Please go through the options one by one. Which of the following here is to be the exchange risk? Clear? So first one is basically that is risk on account of human error. Clear? Risk on account of human error, technical faults, faulty system and procedures. Second one here basically that is risk arising on the account of fluctuations in exchange risk. Clear? Basically risk arising basically on the account of fluctuations in exchange rates or due to mismatches. Clear? Or due to mismatches basically in the FC asset or liability position. Third one is basically risk arising basically on the account of inability or unwillingness of the counterparty to meet the obligations at maturity basically of the underlying transaction. Last one, that is basically risk of failure of the counterparty basically during the course of settlement due to the time zone difference. Clear? Basically due to the time zone difference between the two currencies to be exchanged. Clear? Between the two currencies basically to be exchanged. Clear? So what is the correct answer? Clear? So what is the correct answer of this question? So the correct answer, that is basically option number B. Clear? Exchange risk, it is basically related to the fluctuations in the exchange rate. Clear? Exchange risk. Clear? So risk basically arising on the account of fluctuation basically in the exchange rates. Clear? Basically in the exchange rates or due to mismatches. Clear? Basically or due to mismatches in the FC asset or liability position. Clear? Or due to mismatches in the FC asset or liability position. Clear? So option number B is the correct answer here. Clear? Option number B is the correct answer here. So please tell fast, this question is clear to all of you or not? Now move to the next question. Question number 95. Exchange risk is managed through. Clear? Basically exchange risk is managed through. Option A is that is deal size limit. Option number B is that is counterparty limit. Option C is overnight limit. Option D is all of the above. Clear? Option number D is all of these. Clear? Or all of the above. Clear? So what is the correct answer? Exchange risk it is managed through. Clear? We have discussed that is exchange risk it is managed through deal size limit. Clear? So basically what is the meaning of deal size limit? Clear? This one is correct one. A deal size limit, it is correct. What is the meaning of deal size limit? That is, it is the highest amount. Deal size limit basically it is the highest amount for which a deal can be entered. Clear? Basically for which a deal can be entered. Clear? That is deal size limit. Next one here, that is counterparty limit. This one is also correct. Clear? Basically for managing the exchange risk. Clear? Counterparty limit. Clear? Counterparty limit, that is what is the meaning of that counterparty limit? Counterparty limit basically it is the maximum amount. Clear? Counterparty limit basically it is the maximum amount that a bank can expose. Clear? It is the maximum amount that a bank can expose expose itself to a particular counterparty. Clear? To a particular counterparty. Third one is the overnight limit. Clear? Basically third one is the overnight limit. Clear? So what is the overnight limit? Clear? So basically overnight limit basically it is a maximum amount of open position or exposure that a bank can keep overnight. Clear? That a bank can keep overnight basically when the markets are closed. Clear? That a bank can keep overnight basically when the markets are closed. Clear? So all these are the two here. So option number D is the answer. Clear? Option number D is the answer here. Now move to the next one, question number 96. Sometimes basically they will ask this type of question. That's why basically I have included here also. Interest rate futures. Clear? Basically interest rate futures basically were introduced. First time introduced basically in which year? Clear? Interest rate futures basically were first time introduced in which year? 1970, 1975, 1980 and 1985. Clear? What is the correct answer? 1970, 1975, 1980 and 1985. Clear? So the first time basically the interest rate futures were introduced basically in the year 1975. Clear? So this one is our answer, that is in 1975. Clear? Along with that, clear, basically along with that there is one more question basically. Which is the world's first exchange traded? Clear? Which exchange? I will write here basically which exchange introduced. Clear? Basically which exchange introduced the world's first exchange traded currency future contract? Clear? Basically which exchange introduced the world's first exchange traded currency future contract? Clear? Which exchange basically introduced the world's first exchange traded currency future contract? Clear? Exchange traded currency future contract. Clear? Basically which exchange and in which year? Clear? In 1970. Clear? Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Clear? Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Clear? Introduced the world's first exchange traded currency future contract. Clear? Introduced the world's first currency exchange, first exchange traded currency future contract. Clear? Now move to the next question, question number 97. Very, very important for the examination point of view. Definitely, basically, you will get this type of question in the examination. Clear? That question is basically regarded to the Herstatt risk. Clear? Herstatt risk. Clear? So what is this risk? Clear? Herstatt risk. Clear? Default in making payment by bank to its customer. Default in making payment basically by a bank to another bank. Risk of settlement basically between banks that may arise basically due to the time difference. Risk of losses basically that may be incurred by the banks in forex trade. Clear? That may be incurred by the bank in the forex trade. Clear? So basically that risk, it is basically a risk of settlement. Clear? Herstatt risk basically it is a risk of settlement between the banks that may arise basically due to the time difference. Clear? That may arise basically due to the time difference. Clear? And this risk it is also known as, there are other two names which I have discussed basically when we will discuss the session. Very, very important. It is also known as, this risk it is also known as by two different names. First one is basically the settlement risk. This risk it is also known by the name that is settlement risk. Second one, that is, please tell fast, that is basically they have already asked in the examination that point. Second one here basically which, what is the name? Temporal risk. Clear? Temporal risk. Clear? So this risk it is also known as settlement risk or temporal risk. Clear? So you have to remember all these points. Clear? You have to remember all these points. Clear? So that you are able to answer the question in the examination. Clear? Now move to the next question. Question number 98. Clear? Question number 98. So stop loss limit. Clear? Basically it is one of the, you can say that basically memory based question. Clear? One of the memory based question. Clear? Of the CAB BFM. Clear? Stop loss limit. Clear? Basically stop loss limit it is a type of, clear, stop loss limit basically it is a type of exchange risk, settlement risk, interest rate risk, operational risk. So please tell fast what is the answer. Stop loss limit basically it is a type of exchange risk, settlement risk, interest rate risk, Last one here, that is operational risk. Clear? That last one here, that is operational risk. Clear? So basically, what is the answer? So stop loss limit. Clear? Basically, stop loss limit. Basically, it is a type of the exchange risk. Clear? Basically, it is a type of the exchange risk, like overnight limit, daylight limit, gap limit. Clear? All are basically comes under the exchange risk. Clear? All these things basically comes under the exchange risk. Clear? So stop loss limit, it is also a type of the exchange risk. Clear? Basically, it is also the type of the exchange risk. Clear? So basically, what is the stop loss limit? Clear? What is stop loss limit? Basically, it is maximum movement of rates. Clear? Stop loss limit, basically, it is maximum movement of rates against the position held. Clear? Basically, maximum movement of rates against the position held. Maximum movement of rates basically against the position held. Clear? So as to, please remember these things, so as to trigger the limit. Clear? So that is stop loss limit. Clear? That is basically stop loss limit. Now move to the question number 99. Now move to the question number 99. Very easy question. Normally, limits on the forex daylight position of a bank. Clear? Normally, limits on forex daylight position of a bank are dash overnight position. Clear? Normally limits basically on the forex daylight position. Clear? Daylight position or daylight limit of a bank are dash than the overnight position, higher, lower than, higher than, equal to, or half to. Clear? Lower than, higher than, equal to, or half to. Clear? So normally basically limits on the forex daylight positions of a bank are higher than the overnight position. Clear? Are higher than the overnight position. Clear? So option number B is the answer, that is higher than. Clear? Because in the daytime transaction. Clear? Basically at the daytime basically we are done more transactions. Clear? Basically at the daytime basically done more transactions. Clear? With respect to the overnight. Clear? I will write here also basically daylight limit, that is maximum amount of the open position or exposure. Clear? The bank can expose itself at any time during the day. Clear? Basically at any time during the day. That is basically daylight limit. Clear? And it is basically higher than the overnight limit. Clear? And it is basically higher than the overnight limit. Clear? So option number B is the answer. Now move to the next question, question number 100. So RBI has put in place. Clear? Basically RBI has basically put in place real-time gross settlement system. Clear? Basically RBI has put in place real-time gross settlement system. Clear? RTGS. Clear? RBI has put in place a real-time gross settlement system, RTGS system, to mitigate the falling risk. Clear? Basically to mitigate the falling risk. Clear? Basically which of the falling risk basically they are mentioning here. Clear? Regarding which risk basically they are mentioning here. Market risk, settlement risk, operational risk, strategic risk. Clear? So which RBI has put in place, RBI have basically put in place a real-time gross settlement system. Clear? Basically real-time gross settlement system to mitigate the falling risk. Clear? To basically mitigate the falling risk. Clear? To mitigate the falling risk. Clear? So the first option here, that is market risk. Second one, that is settlement risk. Third one is the operational risk. Fourth one is the strategic risk. Clear? Basically fourth one is the strategic risk. Clear? So what is the correct answer? That is option number B, that is settlement risk. Clear? That is option number B, that is settlement risk. This is our correct answer. Clear? This is our correct answer. Now move to the next question, question number 101. Clear? Please go through the question very carefully. Question is easy, but basically we have to understand. Clear? Basically what we have to understand, what they want to say that. Clear? A bank with the saving deposit portfolio. Clear? Basically a bank with the saving deposit portfolio of rupees 500 crore. Clear? A bank basically with the saving deposit portfolio basically of rupees 500 crore. Invest these funds basically in 12 years. Clear? A bank basically with the saving deposit portfolio basically of rupees 500 crore. Invest these funds basically in 12 years. in 12 years, that is duration of the fund is 12 year of 8.5%, clear, of 8.5%, clear, 8.5% government guaranteed bonds, clear, 8.5%. That is basically banks have to pay 8.5% interest rate, clear, basically bank have to pay basically 8.5% interest rate basically for 12 years, clear, basically for 12 years, clear. Whatever the rate is going to be in the market, basically bank have to pay a fixed rate that is of 8.5%, clear. The bonds are actively traded, clear, the bonds are actively traded. Banks face basically which of the following risk, clear, basically bank face basically which of the following risk, clear. Market or market liquidity, clear. Bank here basically will not face any market or market liquidity because they have mentioned that is basically fixed rate of interest that is 8.5%, clear, and that is basically government guaranteed bonds, clear, basically in the government guarantee bonds, clear, basically there is not any basically we can say that counterparty risk, clear. In the government guarantee bond also we will not face any counterparty risk, clear, basically in the government guarantee rate also basically we will not face any counterparty risk also, clear. So here basically what risk basically we will face here, that is the risk of interest, clear, that is the risk of interest here basically which we will face it, clear. So option number C is the answer, that is interest rate risk, clear, interest rate, clear. Which of the following basically the bank will face a risk here, that is the interest rate, clear. Please tell fast, this question is clear to all of you or not. Market liquidity here basically they will not face here, clear. Market liquidity risk basically they will not face here, clear. So you have to remember these things, clear. So you have to remember these things, clear. Market liquidity risk basically they will not face here. Okay. So now move to the next question. Question number 102. Clear. So please remember these things, clear. Please remember these things. These are not typical, but they will ask these types of twisting questions, clear, in the examination, clear. Not that much typical, we know that, but you have to remember, clear, basically, but you have to remember these questions. Now move to the next question, 102, clear. Very easy question. This is the first line which we have discussed, clear, in the chapter number 2, clear. A risk is, clear, basically what is a risk, clear. Very important and easy question, clear. Basically we will expect this type of question in the examination. Basically a risk is, clear, a risk is, first one is related to illness, clear. Basically a risk is basically related to illness which does not affect the human life. Second one is basically a risk is related to the events which do not affect the profits of the organization. Third one is basically a risk is related to the unplanned event with the financial consequences basically resulting in loss. Basically a risk, it is a certain event basically where outcome is known, clear, basically where outcome is known, clear. So what is the risk here, clear. So what is the risk here, basically a risk, it is related to the unplanned event, clear. Basically here risk, it is related to the unplanned event basically with the financial consequences resulting in loss, clear. So here basically what is the risk, clear. So here basically what is the risk here, a risk, it is basically related to the unplanned event, clear. Here risk basically it is related to the unplanned event with the financial consequences, clear. Basically with the financial consequences that is basically resulting in the loss, clear. Basically a risk here, it is basically related to the unplanned event, clear. So please remember, a risk, it is always an unplanned event with the financial consequences resulting in loss, clear. So this one is our answer, clear. So this one is our answer, clear. Option number C is the answer here. Now move to the next question, question number 103. Please tell what is the answer, clear. Important question, easy question, clear. Basically following are the types of foreign exchange exposure, clear. Which of the following are the type of the foreign exchange exposure, clear. Basically we have already discussed regarding these things in detail very well, clear. Basically when we have discussed topic, clear, basically which following are the type of foreign exchange exposure, clear. Just they are asking the type. Transaction, it is one of the type or not, yes, this one is the answer. Translation exposure, this one is also the answer, clear. So now basically we are sometimes basically we are confusing between them. What is, either they are to be exchange exposure or economic exposure, clear. So that one basically the economic exposure or the operating exposure, clear, not the exchange exposure. Either it is to the economic exposure or the operating exposure, clear, or the operating exposure, clear. So A1 is A is correct, B is correct, C is not correct, D is correct, clear. D is correct, clear. So what is the answer here? 103. What is the answer here? A, B, and D, clear. A, B, and D are correct here. Clear? Very, very easy question. Clear? Every student basically have to attempt these type of question correctly. Clear? Basically, to clear the examination, you have to answer these types of question correctly. Clear? So what is the answer here? That is option number C. This one is the correct answer. A, B, and D. Clear? So please revise the topic before the discussion. Clear? So that you are able to remember all these points. Now next one, question number 104. Clear? Derivatives. Derivatives are basically mostly used. Clear? Derivatives are most often used to hedge which type of exchange rate risk. Clear? Basically, derivatives are most often used to hedge which type of exchange rate risk. Clear? Basically, which type of exchange rate risk. Clear? Derivatives are most often used basically to hedge which type of exchange rate risk. Clear? Exchange exposure, sir, there is nothing, any term. Just basically they are asking. Clear? Basically, we have not discussed anything regarding that. So basically here derivatives are basically mostly used to hedge which type of exchange rate risk? Transaction exposure, translation exposure, economic exposure, or none of the above. Clear? So derivatives are mostly used basically in the transaction exposure. Clear? Basically derivatives are mostly used basically in the transaction exposure. Clear? Mostly used to hedge basically which type of risk? That is transaction exposure. Clear? So option number A is the answer here. Okay. So basically there are three types of exchange rate risk, that is transaction exposure, economic exposure, and the translation exposure. Clear? Futures, basically it is part of the derivatives. Clear? Or under the derivatives. Futures, put, call, option. Clear? All are basically derivatives. Futures. Clear? So basically futures are most often used to hedge transaction exposure. Clear? Futures are basically most often used to basically hedge transaction exposure. Which is the risk? Clear? Basically, which is the risk? That exchange rates will change the real value. Clear? Which is the risk? Basically, that the exchange rates basically will change the real value in the domestic currency of the contracted price. Clear? Basically, of the contracted price. Clear? That will change the real value. That is basically the domestic currency. Clear? Of the contracted price. Clear? So basically, in which basically we used mostly a derivative, that is basically under the transaction exposure. Clear? That is basically under the transaction exposure. Now move to the question number 105. Very, very easy question. Maintaining a foreign currency account. Clear? Basically maintaining a foreign currency account is helpful in. Clear? Basically maintaining a foreign currency account, basically it is helpful in. Clear? First one is basically avoiding transaction cost, avoiding exchange risk, avoiding both transaction cost and exchange risk, avoiding exchange risk, and domestic currency depreciation. Clear? Basically domestic currency depreciation. Clear? So first one is avoiding transaction cost. This one is correct one. Clear? Basically maintaining a foreign currency account is quite helpful basically in avoiding the transaction cost. This one is correct one. Avoiding the exchange risk also, this one is also correct one. Clear? So basically both the correct one, that is basically mentioning the option number C, that is clear, avoiding both the transaction cost and the exchange risk. Clear? Avoiding basically both the transaction cost and the exchange risk. Clear? Option number C is the answer here. Clear? Option number C is the answer here. Clear? Avoiding basically both the transaction cost and the exchange risk. Clear? Avoiding basically both the transaction cost and the exchange risk. Clear? So option number C is the correct answer here. Clear? Now move to the last question basically of our today's discussion, question number 106. What kind of risk? Clear? Basically what kind of risk basically on settlement is covered by the Herstat risk, basically for which BCBS was formed. Clear? Basically for which BCBS was formed. Clear? Basically what kind of risk basically on the settlement is covered basically by the Herstat risk, basically for which BCBS was formed. Clear? First one is the exchange rate risk. Second one is the time difference risk. Third one is the interest rate risk. Fourth one is the none. Clear? Fourth one is the none. Clear? So basically this risk, it is basically related to the time difference risk. Clear? This risk, it is basically related to the time difference risk. Clear? So this one is our answer. Clear? So this risk, it is basically related to the time difference risk. So this is our answer. Clear? So this is our answer. Clear? Please remember all these things. Clear? So please remember all these things. Clear? While answering the question. Clear? So basically in this session, basically we have to discuss up to this much point. Clear? We will provide you some questions in the Telegram also for the practice purpose. Clear? In your respective BFM group. Clear? Basically we will provide you some questions for the practice purpose. Clear? So thanks to all of you for attending this session, and I request to all of you, please revise topics. Clear? So that you are able to answer the question perfectly. Clear? So that you are able to answer the question perfectly.